My name is Kara Ginger, and your host of the Bytable podcast, Know Better, Live Best. Today's guest is David McConnell, the principal and head grower for Infinity 100 Farms in Raleigh, North Carolina. He manages the farm's multiple sites, which total over 30 acres, and make Infinity 100 Farms one of the largest urban farms in the United States. Listen as we discuss how he juggles being a father, artist, record producer, furniture designer, and last but not least, a full-time farmer. Know Better, Live Best is dedicated to supporting food and health literacy in people of all ages. Our mission is to cut through the misinformation surrounding food, health, and nutrition because we believe that when people know better, they can make the right choices and live their best lives. We are presented by Bytable Foods. They use blockchain and Internet of Things technology to build traceable, transparent food systems because it shouldn't take an investigative journalist to find out where food comes from. Hello, everyone. I'm here with Dave McConnell of Infinity 100 Farms. Hi, David. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
Good. I'm so happy to be talking with you tonight. As we were talking briefly before we got started, I just think your background's so interesting with what you're doing now, but yet I have a feeling I'll find out like a big correlation between what you did. So talk a little bit first about, artist, record producer, furniture maker. I love it. Tell me a little bit about that.
So since I was a kid, I was always interested in music. As far back as I can remember, my father was a concert pianist. And he kind of got me interested in it a little bit, but, I got into a different style of music than he was into, and I just kind of ran with it. I guess I was a little rebellious, and I got interested in recording music a lot, like music production. And, by the time I was 18, I was already producing albums for other artists, and I was, basically like one of the youngest, if not the youngest, record producer in the industry at the time. And I just loved making albums with people, and I did it for many years. I even made some of my own records, and I had a few bands, and we toured the world many times, and I made over 100 albums with different artists, and of all different types, and some of them were famous, and a lot of them were not, but they were all just really interesting projects. And working with people, especially musicians, is interesting. It can also be challenging, but I was basically responsible for making sure that their projects were good. Essentially, I tried to get the best out of all the artists that I worked with. So I did that for a long time, for more than a decade. And, eventually the record industry sort of collapsed, if you will, because of digital technology, right? Mm-hmm. So album sales just weren't happening anymore after about the year 2000. So, all the record labels went out of business. Most of them did. And so I couldn't really make a living at that anymore. And I was also transitioning out of my relationship at the time. And I was like, you know what, maybe I should leave California and just start over. And so I left California, where I'd grown up my whole life. And I basically just jumped on an airplane with a backpack and ended up in North Carolina. And after a couple of weeks of being in North Carolina, I was in Asheville, the small town of Asheville, and I loved it. And after being there for a couple of weeks, I found a house and decided to stay. And I was just walking down the street one day, and I walked into an art supply store and just bought a roll of canvas and a bunch of paint. And I went home and threw the canvas down on the floor. I didn't even have a proper easel or anything like that. I just threw it on the living room floor, and I started painting. And so that was the beginning of what became a 15-year art career. And I was still making records too in Asheville. I had a recording studio there as well. So I was making records while I was painting. And I found an art gallery, and my work was shown in a bunch of galleries, around the country. And then I got my first major museum show, and then more museum shows, and then I ended up showing at 6 major museums in the United States, and sort of got a really good name for myself as an artist, but then, almost like the music industry, the art world sort of collapsed around like, I don't know, 2009, or 2010 after the collapse of the,
Yep.
the whole economy, really.
Mm-hmm.
People stopped buying art pretty quick, stopped buying art pretty fast after the economy tanks. So that's kind of what happened. And I spent a few years just trying to figure things out. I was still doing art just because I felt like I had to do it. But in 2010, my son was born. And after that, the way that I thought about things changed pretty dramatically. Just the way that the world works, and people and animals and plants. And so, I was hurting financially. I was a single father trying to support this kid on my own. And there were times when I would go without a meal, sometimes for a few days, where I'd just be drinking water and like forced fasting, if you will.
That's what I was thinking.
Because I didn't have the money to feed myself and my kids. So I'd be feeding him, cooking for him, these really healthy meals, what I thought were really healthy meals, but I wasn't nourished. So I started researching ways to be more food stable, if you will. I read all the books I could from the library, and I started that way. I read what I could online, but I became a forager. I learned how to forage for food, just like in my neighborhood and in the woods nearby, in fields, and just learned how to identify wild edible plants. And that's how I started to feed myself. And after I started doing that, it opened up my mind to so many possibilities. And I loved it. I loved foraging. I loved being out in nature. Like, it made me happy. Even though I wasn't really financially stable, I was extremely happy, like way happier than I'd been in years.
Oh.
And I took that foraging knowledge and I expanded on it by learning about cultivating food and reading about agriculture, and all the while reading about sociological sort of issues around the world and how they're related to food, and how civilizations have actually collapsed over time. If you look at history, how that correlates to food and agricultural systems, and how giant empires have just collapsed overnight. If you look at history, and a lot of that is actually related to food, to agriculture in particular. Desertification, so many major civilizations have failed because of desertification, because they were growing food for massive amounts of people in a way that was not sustainable for the land. So I researched a lot about that for many years. I read a lot about permaculture. I read a lot about, all the different techniques, going back to ancient techniques, and, ways that people cultivate food all around the world, and just looking for my favorite parts of each one of those styles of growing food. And I kind of made my own style out of my favorite bits of all the different, methods out there, and just started experimenting and playing with it. And my son and I, when he was about 4.5, started cutting all the bamboo out of the backyard to make way for a garden. And that was the beginning. And I started just experimenting with all these different strategies for growing food in our backyard, and taking notes on what worked and what didn't. And then I just slowly started to expand on that. And eventually I got a job working at our only certified organic farm, in our county, in Wake County. It's called Hilltop Farms. And I was assistant grower there for 2 years. I learned a lot there. But I still felt like I had to learn more. And so I moved on, and that's when I started Infinity 100 Farms. And I started that on a 1/4 acre. And I began with a very small CSA, And my CSA model was delivery. So I had like 5 or 6 members, and I just delivered stuff that I was growing out of my backyard to them once a week. And it was enough to help me with my bills and support my son and all that. And I was like, wow, this is really interesting. Like, I wonder what I could do with more land and more time and more research. And so that's how it all started. And from there, I just, kept growing the farm to where now we're like, one of the largest, land-wise, one of the largest urban farms in the country. And, it's, like I said earlier, it's probably the second hardest job in the world. It's really challenging, but every day I feel so fulfilled with what I do, even though it's extremely hard and I'm always exhausted. But I love every minute of it.
Well, it's interesting earlier how you touched on just how happy you felt. Financial issues can really cause stress on people and bring them down, but that's not what you did. You were, a problem solver. You went out and how can you feed yourself since you're already taking care of your son, the fabulous father you are. But you really touched on how great you felt. And so that it actually kind of makes sense how you continued on the path you then went on. And with Infinity 100 Farms, you talked about being a CSA. Can you talk a little bit more about what a CSA is for all the listeners?
Yeah, that term is strange because it's called, it's community supported agriculture, right? So it's you would think that it's basically the community supporting the farmer, but actually it's almost the reverse. It's more of the farmer supporting the community, at least when it's done right. So, some people refer to it as like getting a subscription to a produce share or a produce box or something like that, right? Mm-hmm. And it's kind of like that because, like when you subscribe to a magazine, you get that magazine once a month or bi-weekly or whatever. But with the food, you get a box of food every week that's grown by somebody you trust, right? So I'm that guy in my community, and that's what I do here in Raleigh. And this is a booming city. It's like growing, just great. The amount of people that move here every day is insane. This is one of the most, sort of loved cities in America right now, and talked about cities. So people are just flocking here, and the job market's good and all that. So what I'm doing is growing this urban farm downtown where real estate is basically skyrocketing. I'm growing food on these properties and trying to feed these people in my community who are interested, who care about this stuff, who are educated enough to know that, hey, there's this guy, that gives us a box of food every week that's extremely fresh and extremely nutrient dense, which is the term, really is the takeaway term, nutrient density. So like I'm growing my vegetables to be extremely healthy the way that vegetables were about 60 years ago, before industrial ag really took over. Well, I should say more like 75 years ago. And, God, I just heard this crazy statistic the other day, actually, that speaks to this. Something about an apple that you would have to eat like, I don't know, a dozen or so apples to get as much nutrient content as one apple 70 years ago.
Really?
And I don't know if that's true, but that's one of the statistics I've recently heard. But I do know that it's true that nutritional value in food has been, decreased exponentially over time because of the way the soil has been abused by large industrial agriculture. So a small farmer like myself can really pay attention to that soil, and if they're really careful, they can actually make it better over time and really treat that soil like you really start to treat it like a family member almost. You feed it and you nurture it and you take care of it. Then the vegetables that come out of that soil in return will nurture you in an optimal way. So that's really what I'm striving to do with the CSA is give these people what they deserve. which is health, because they're not going to get that from their government. The government does not do that. The government, the USDA, they're out there trying to make sure people aren't getting poisoned, but they're really not monitoring the health. They're not being proactive about, hey, we want our people to be healthy.
Mm-hmm.
So in a way, I think that's what I'm doing. That's my job, is to make sure that my community is healthy. My people that come to me to get the food, I'm taking care of them. So, even though it's called community-supported agriculture, it's kind of the opposite. It's kind of like agriculture-supported community.
Well, I love that idea, and I feel like you're making it more convenient for them to be healthy.
Well, you try, yeah.
Well, I think that's the challenge for a lot of people. I think many want to be healthier, may not always know how to do it, but you learn. But sometimes it's just hard. Like winter can be difficult. Finding fresh produce, like you said, when you're going to the store, I look through things and you're just like cringing some of the times because it's been sitting for how long. And like you said, when you get that fresh food, how much, I'm sure it's tastier. I can only imagine. But I'm sure it's tastier.
It's night and day. My CSA members just can't stop talking about how delicious the food is. They don't really talk about the nutrient density. They talk about the flavor. They're just like, this stuff tastes amazing. Like, we can't shop at the grocery store anymore because we're ruined now, and that's how it is. That's totally how it is. That's how my kid is. He won't touch a carrot that's from the store because he has the ones that are growing in the garden, and he's like, God, this is candy. Whereas the one from the grocery store tastes like cardboard,
Right.
So yeah, there's a huge flavor difference, but also, it's more beautiful. I harvest the day that my CSA picks up. I always harvest the same day. Nothing gets stored overnight even. Whereas like the stuff you get from the grocery store, it sits on a truck for a week and a half. I mean, it sits in a warehouse first, then on a truck, then in another warehouse, then another truck, and then another truck. That's how our food system is failing to do what it needs to do. It's ridiculous to try and feed a population that way. To warehouse food, unless you're talking about grains or root vegetables, to warehouse food is just not ideal, and it's not working for the health of our culture, of our community. And unfortunately, the culture has bought into it. The American culture has bought into that food system and thinks it's right, thinks it's okay. They think that the government allows it, so it must be okay. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, it's not. And, just because it's not poisoning you doesn't mean that it's okay to be eating this stuff, because over time it does poison you by depleting you of nutrients and depleting you of what you really need to sustain a healthy life.
Right. It just sounds like a dream to go pick up that fresh box of produce. So what are some typical items in the box right now that your clients pick up?
Well, so I literally just got home from my CSA, so I can tell you what was in it today. Today we had, it was a pretty interesting list. We had Hawkeye turnips, which are a favorite among the members. I refer to them as the crack cocaine of the CSA box because we want more of those Hawkeye turnips. So I'm growing a lot more of those these days to keep everybody happy. Let's see. Today we had adzuki bean sprouts. We had pea shoots. We had a red butterhead lettuce, hydroponically grown. We had a bib lettuce, hydroponically grown. So they got two types of lettuce. I always like to give them a red and a green. They got, what else did they get today? They got sweet Thai basil today. And a few more items that I'm just not thinking of right now. It'll come to me in a minute. But, they got about 10 or 12 things today. And then we also have a trade box where they can, if they don't like any item in their share, they can swap it out into the trade box. And so today the trade box had this gorgeous rainbow shard in it, Swiss shard rainbow, just multicolored chard in it, and that's what they could trade out for if they didn't like one of the items, And the members love having the flexibility of being able to trade stuff out. And in fact, when they show up, the box isn't prepared for them yet. They actually do it market style. So they grab a box, and then they go down the aisle and they take one of each and put it in their share. That way they get to see everything individually before it's in the box. That way they can ask questions about each item if they want. They can see what's going into their box, and then they can also be like, well, I don't like whatever it might be. Maybe it's mint or cilantro or something. Last week there was a couple people who didn't want cilantro, so they switched that out into the trade box. I think it was like pak choy or something that they traded for. No, actually, I think it was Hakurei turnips. But anyway, so yeah, it's winter here. It's not as cold as where you're at, but because of greenhouse technology, I'm able to have CSA 365 days a year and produce. I mean, I'm harvesting over 1,000 pounds of produce a week, basically.
Wow.
In the winter. That's in the winter, in the dead of winter. In the summer, it goes up from there. But, it's just, it's crazy that more farmers aren't growing in the winter. There's a huge market gap because they're told that they can't do it in the winter, but they can. And it's just learning how to do that, how to do it effectively, how to have a crop rotation in the winter.
Mm-hmm.
And, like I say, there's always at least 10 things in their share, even in January or February. So, yeah, there's, if I can do it, people can do it. It's not all that difficult if you want to put in the time to learn how to do it.
Right. And just thinking outside the box, I think we all can get pretty comfortable with what we do for a living without, thinking of change. And I just, like I said, some of the produce I get right now, and I still need to look outside the box too with what is available to me, but it spoils so quickly. So I'm sure the shelf life of your fresh food is so much longer.
Oh, big time. Yeah. I mean, that's one of the reasons why people come to us, is because they know, that stuff is not going to go bad very quickly. And because we harvest it the day of, the day PSA picks up, it's usually been harvested within an hour, half of it anyway. If not, if not that morning, it was harvested right before they pick up.
Right.
So it's no more than about, 4 or 5 hours tops from the time that it was harvested to the time they pick it up. But usually more than half of their share was harvested within 1 hour of pickup. And so, yeah, the shelf life is amazing. Like some of these members tell me, like, yeah, I still have stuff from 2 weeks ago in my fridge. And it's, and it's like, yeah, I know.
That wouldn't happen from a store.
When I take it home, I still have stuff too. So, yeah. Whereas if you get it from the grocery store, it's already been sitting for over 2 weeks. So you're getting it right at the end of its, of all the good, potential for that vegetable. It's already gone. So.
Yeah, I have to buy produce weekly.
Oh, yeah.
Yep, for sure. For us, too, because it goes by. You can tell when it's Friday and we're going downhill, like just looking at produce. If we haven't gotten through it, you can tell. And some I have to just even stop midweek to get some more because I've thrown away my fair share, or, at least with compost and things like that, because we just couldn't make it work, or maybe freeze or things like that. And it's still a learning curve of what to do before it spoils, or just so you're not throwing it away. I know we composted and we're still trying to get back into that and work that out with our home, but it's interesting. So if it was fresh longer, you can make so many more things with it. And I could just, like I said, I'm just kind of drooling. I'm also hungry, but thinking about the freshness of the food. So is it a lot more time consuming with your winter CSA?
Time consuming. Like,
does it take long? I mean, I'm trying to think. Just when you're growing, is it once you've got it set up and how it works? Do you say use a greenhouse?
Yeah, I use several greenhouses, and so we control the environment to a certain extent. We don't want to use a ton of energy, so we're not controlling it. You know, we're not trying to grow like tomatoes in winter or something like that. We're growing crops that are already cool season crops, right? Because we don't want to be wasting energy. We don't want to be using fossil fuels to grow food in the winter, right? So we want to keep the carbon footprint as low as possible.
Okay.
There are a couple of times when the temperatures might dip below 10 degrees, and we might have to like have some heat going for a couple of hours in the wee hours of the morning.
Mm-hmm.
But really it's mainly just using passive energy systems. We do have some supplemental lighting here and there, which I find if you use LED lighting is pretty efficient. Actually, I'm looking at some right now. I'm at home now. Even at home, my back porch, I've converted into a greenhouse, a hydroponic greenhouse. And actually, I could even show you if you want to see it.
Yeah.
I could just probably bring this over.
Let's do it.
So, and for me, I think this is the future of food for a lot of people. So this is my little patio off of my house. And so I've got 3 levels of plants growing here. I don't know if you can see it well or not. But anyway, the top here, you've got like strawberries, lettuces, herbs, all growing on top. And then in the middle down below, we've got more herbs. You can see there's basil, arugula, beets, turnips, more lettuces in the back. And then all the way down here at the bottom, I don't know if you can see that, are microgreens. So there's 3 levels of food growing just in this tiny patio here, all lit by just very efficient LED lights. And so it's a greenhouse. So during the day, the sun heats it up, and what happens is the thermal reaction from the sun's heat actually heats my house too in the winter.
Oh, cool.
So I use very little. Heat in my house as well. So it sort of helps with energy costs as well in the house. Just to have that greenhouse off of the back patio there, helps with expenses as well, and it lowers the carbon footprint of where I'm living. But the greenhouses at the farm are huge. They're like 70 foot long, by 30 foot wide, type greenhouses.
That is so cool. I would never have guessed that was just right off to the left of you.
Yeah. I mean, and that's what we eat. That's our food supply. So, when we go to the grocery store, it might be for like, some pasta. We might get some dry pasta, maybe a bottle of wine.
Nice.
And that's about it. And then or like if we need like some soap or something, but. We're never in the produce aisle. Very rarely does that happen.
Your grocery bill's got to be so low.
It's lower than most people I know, for sure.
That's awesome. How amazing. So you can tell how passionate you are about this, and you even spoke about that when you had your son, how the world kind of started, the look maybe of how you were looking at the world and the food system. So tell us a little bit about your mission statement for Infinity 100 Farm, because you talked about empowering the community, advocating sustainability, and supply local produce. Do you want to go in a little more depth about that?
Sure. Yeah. So it's, obviously they're all kind of intertwined. So like, we're empowering the community by just bringing them health. We're bringing them something they wouldn't be able to get if we weren't here. There are a few farmers nearby, but they're really not quite reaching the audience yet. They're still, a lot of the farmers that I know are still sort of in that incubator phase where they're like kind of trying to figure it out. Okay. So, or they're just selling, to like restaurants or whatever. So what we're trying to do with our CSA is empower people through health, right? We're selling them this food at a discounted price. Every week we plan our box by giving them 20% cost reduction on what they would pay at the grocery store, sometimes more. So we're empowering them, in the obvious way there by giving them this incredibly nutrient-dense food, which makes them healthier.
Mm-hmm.
It saves them, healthcare costs, A, because they're eating better. B, it saves them money, because not only because of the shelf life, but also because it's cheap. Our produce is literally cheaper. So then they would pay at the store. So that's the one way we're empowering the community. The other way we're doing it is through education. So we have educational programs at the farm also that we offer, not just about food, not just about farming, but we teach them about sustainability in all these different ways. One of my key educational offerings at the farm is the yoga class that we have there. That's empowering people by through health, through avenues of health, but it's also sustainability. Katie Breen Yoga is key to that, key to our mission. She's in there year round, outside, teaching yoga outside in the warm months. In the cold months, she takes the class into our greenhouse, our hydroponic greenhouse, and they do yoga in there. There's a couple of great photos on our Instagram page of her doing the yoga class in this hydroponic greenhouse. So you see like thousands of plants, and then people doing yoga right in the center of all of it. So there's all these educational components, and we do offer classes on sustainable farming too. And we've done classes on food fermentation, how to preserve food through fermentation. It's just a wonderful thing to know about, and it's fascinating, but that's also related to health. So, everything's related to health that we do. And it's a lot of fun, at the same time. We teach people composting. They love that. They love learning about stuff like that. So, whether it's about health for humans or health for the environment, it's all about health.
Oh, it's all intertwined, how it goes together. And it's probably interesting that your customers that are doing yoga, they're surrounded by this healthy food. It's like you said, you work out, mind, body.
Well, that's the cool thing about Katie is that, when she's teaching yoga, she, part of the class is you leave with a head of lettuce. So, of hydroponic lettuce. So like you go and do yoga for an hour and a half and then you leave with a head of lettuce, So, just, it's perfect.
Where else can you do that? I love that.
Yeah, it's like, it's like agritourism at its finest, really.
It's amazing. So it's interesting because, and I'm not sure if you listened, but in our previous podcast with Rebecca Beck of Raleigh City Farms, and you are in contact with this farm, correct?
Well, we're literally basically the same farm. So Raleigh City Farm is our partner.
Is your partner farm?
Yeah. So we actually do the farming part of it. Raleigh City Farm is our, they sort of do all the advocate work on our behalf. They are a nonprofit. They are the ones who do the community outreach on our behalf. So what we do is we take care of the land. Well, they do some of that too with volunteer work, actually.
Yes.
They do like wine and weeds work. Volunteers will come out and help weed and stuff like that. But as far as the farming part, that's our job. That's what Infinity 100 does. And then Raleigh City Farm is the community outreach and support system that we really are grateful to have, because we couldn't do this without them. And I mean, they help us in so many ways because we're farming, so like farms would be so much more successful if they had a Raleigh City, if they had a nonprofit helping them, supporting, giving them that support. I think small farms would be so much more successful.
Oh, absolutely. And it's funny how you brought the wine and weed, because it's funny how the few things I always remember. I'm like, I remember the wine and weed. No, there's so many cool ideas they talked about that really brought the community in. And that's how you're talking about it. It really is supporting the community and, supporting each other really with the healthy food and the teaching and the yoga and, even wine, brings people together.
Absolutely. It's good community building right there.
You did touch on this a little bit, but just to sum it up. So why do you think it's so important to build strong communities around food?
I think it's important to build strong communities, period.
Right.
I think that food just happens to be a way that you can do it really successfully because people love to eat, right? But American culture is such that, it's such a fast food culture, people have really tried to dumb down the way that they eat because, whether it's because they're too busy, or it's just a choice. But really people, what they've done is they've taken something that used to take a couple of hours and they try and make it as quick as possible now. Let's have our dinner within, 20 minutes because we're busy. We got stuff to do. Or they just don't enjoy or know how to prepare that meal in a healthier way. So part of it's a lack of education, but it's really just the cultural shift that's happened in our society, the post-industrial shift, if you will, that began during the industrial age and now is just getting sort of more exaggerated in the post-industrial age and in the digital age, for that matter. So, the mentality of our culture is very, much that, even look at like Amazon, it's like people won't even go shopping anymore. They just want that delivered to their door, everything. And so, I feel like our culture is just trying to expedite every element of their lives now. And unfortunately, that is not community building. That takes away from community building. Families don't connect when they don't sit down for an hour and eat at the table. They just, that family is less likely to be harmonious if they do not sit down and have that meal for an hour, every day, twice a day, if, hopefully at least, right? So breakfast, lunch, and dinner if you can, but even one meal a day, that family has such a better chance at being a successful family unit if they do it even just once for an hour at night at the end of their long days, instead of like, all right, everybody grab your, your TV dinner and go do your thing. It's just the act and sitting down at that table and actually talking to each other. It's that simple. It's that, there's no science here behind this. It's just sit down and talk to each other, and eat.
And it's true. And that's when I find my boys are more willing to talk about their school days is at dinner or at bedtime. Like when, you're reading a book or just, chilling and relaxing on those nights that seem a little less hectic.
Yeah, exactly.
But, and the struggle definitely can be real and challenging, but that is something that I think is really important, is sitting down for a little bit, talking about your day, like giving them your undivided attention with like the TV off or, cell phone put down or, whatever else that can be there and distracting.
Totally. Yeah.
And I think it helps relationship with food.
Yes, it does. Yeah, I mean, if people just take the time, even if it's like learning a couple of recipes, and then finding a place to get fresh ingredients for those recipes, finding your local, grower, your local orchardist, your local gardeners, but also really, if you can, grow it yourself, it's not that hard once you start doing it. And, I think that's the future of food, especially as we get overpopulated. We're not going to be able to rely on big agriculture to sustain our society anymore, in my opinion. And people are going to have to do stuff like I'm doing back here on their balconies or their patios. They're going to have to grow that stuff by themselves, or else they're not going to have it, And the processed food companies are probably okay with that because they'll just keep dumbing down the quality of their products as the resources are drained, as the soil is totally depleted across the nation, around the world actually. But yeah, it's just people are going to have to start, doing this themselves eventually anyway. So.
Well, just seeing what you're doing is really inspiring because I think and I'm sure many people are like me and feel this way, especially, winters, especially the Midwest when, you can't think of your typical growing. I mean, people garden in, the spring, summer, fall, you can do some things. Then it's that winter that gets me. But all it takes is probably what you're saying. Just look into it a little more. It might be a little challenging at first.
Yeah, I'm looking behind you right now, and I see on top of your cabinets that you could have like about 50 heads of lettuce growing very easily right there.
Really? Just right above the cabinets?
Hydroponically, yeah. Yep. Very easy.
Really?
Yeah, you have the space for it. Totally. You can just use a few LED lights. You'd be running lettuce all winter long. You guys would never have to even worry about going to the store. And not just lettuce. You could have your herbs up there and your microgreens and your kale and all that stuff just right on top of your cabinets there. No problem.
I would have never thought of that.
All you need is a step stool to get up there and harvest that stuff.
Right.
But it's so easy. Once you plant it into the system, it takes such little maintenance. If you're using a hydroponic system, you have to do so little. You just monitor it just, every few days just to make sure that, things are going right. But it's not like people think of when they think about growing food, like, oh, you got to get out there and, dig in the soil and, hydroponics, you can do it in your kitchen, and grow enough food for your family. So, yeah.
That is something to look into because I want fresher food.
Yeah.
And I'm willing to put in the time, especially, I'll do a lot, even on the weekends, I've talked about this a lot, trying to just prep ahead. So, when you get home at 5:00 at night and the kids go to bed at like 7:30, you want to have as much done so you can spend more time with them.
Absolutely.
But you can still have fresh food.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you talked about the future of maybe even in homes doing more of their growing. Is that kind of what you see for the future? Are you hoping more communities have CSAs?
Yeah. So, that's what we're trying to do is teach people how to do this in their homes. But I do think that, that a lot of people just, would rather opt to support their local farmer, which is fantastic. That's what you should do. You really need to, people need to start stepping up and, putting their money where their mouth is, because everybody talks about how cool local farms are.
Yeah.
But then they just go to the grocery store, so it's like, just get to know those farmers. And I think that's the future of food, part one. And then part two is like, when things get really ridiculous with overpopulation, which is happening at a dramatic rate, then people will be forced to grow it themselves. Like they just won't have another option. So there's that.
That is, it's interesting to think about. Well, you have to kind of think ahead and, what could happen. And, even if, you may not be worried about that, I don't really know, but growing yourself is just an awesome thing to do, but also supporting your local farmer. I think they're both really important. So what's your view of future farming? If you had a dream, like, I guess your dream of future farming, not maybe what you think might happen, what you hope happens.
Yeah. So what I'd like to see is that, here in North Carolina, we have a massive amount of development occurring at a rate that's just unbelievable. Mm-hmm. And that's all over the country, really. But, developers are really taking advantage of the population boom. And they understand that people, there's more people right. and places to live, and they need more shopping malls, and they need blah, blah, blah. More car dealerships and more parking garages. And, so development is happening at an alarming rate. What I'd like to see is that developers step up responsibly and add that urban farm right next to that parking garage or right next to that, apartment building or condo or whatever they're building, or on top of the roof of that condo, have a sustainable farm, hydroponics farm right on top of that roof. These are the things that I'm designing right now that I can show developers. I can give them plans and say, like, this is how it works. This is how much it costs. This is how easy it is to do and to maintain. So I've actually been able to do that with one of our partners, who's a developer, a commercial developer and landholder. And he is awesome. He's not one of the bad guys. He's one of the good guys, because he believes in this stuff and he's happy to facilitate urban farming. And so we actually have a couple of our farm sites on some of his properties. And And we pay the taxes on those properties and the bills associated with that. But he's, he knows that this stuff works, and so he allows us to do that, and he wants that associated with his business model anyway, because he knows that you can't have a successful community without urban farming, without growing food in an urban setting. And that helps the whole community, not just from health standpoint, but also it makes his other properties look more attractive.
Right.
For a small farmer nearby. So it's a win-win for everybody. So I see that model being really thriving in the future if leaders in business start incorporating that type of thinking into their business structure. Everybody stands a greater chance of success.
Oh, absolutely. And what I like is you're dreaming big, but you're already taking steps to those dreams. Like you're showing people how this change can work already, instead of just saying, oh, this would be cool if it happened. Like you're making this happen. Like you said, with your friend who's developing.
Got no choice. Have to make it happen.
Well, right. And that's what I love. It's like, those go-getters and the doers that are showing people. And I love this education. That's why I love talking to people like you that give me ideas just right above my cabinets.
That's right. I'm looking at them right now going, gosh, that's about 75 heads of lettuce right there.
I would have never. That's just like space to me. That's all that is just space to me. I would have never considered that. But especially, checking it every few days, I can handle that.
Yeah. You just check the water level every 2-3 days and you're fine.
That's amazing.
And then harvest your lettuce when you're hungry.
See, I just got to talk to my husband. This probably will happen now.
I can send you the information on how to do it if you want.
No, I seriously would love to. My husband, he totally supports this, and he's the one that started a garden, years ago in our backyard, and he started composting. These were like his ideas, and I was like, oh, that's cool. Yeah, let's do that. So he'd be all over that. Absolutely.
Yeah. Awesome.
Well, if there's anything that you would like the audience to take away from the day, what's one thing you really want, to bring home?
The obvious is just, you're doing yourself a disservice by not working with your small local farms, your urban farms. But you really are hurting yourself because you're missing out on something awesome. Not just from the food standpoint, because the food's amazing, it's delicious, and it's cheaper than the grocery store, and way better. So you're missing out from that standpoint, but also by not joining those CSAs, you're missing out on relationships with other people, those other members that you get to hang out with when you're picking up your share, those people you get to meet. At the end of our CSA every year, we have a party. You're missing out on that party. People they're just missing out when they don't explore that as an option, when they think that the only way they can get their food is just like traditional modern ways of getting food. So, that's the main takeaway is guys, it's not about supporting your farmer. It's about just help yourselves, help yourselves. Yes, it'll support the farmer too, but help yourselves to something that's there that you're missing out on, because it's awesome. And once you try it, you'll see right away that it's just night and day.
Well, that's great advice for everyone.
Take away for that.
Yeah.
For that discussion about this whole topic of CSA.
Well, it is really just great advice or reminders for those that may have wanted to do it or has let life get in the way, because I know we all can do that. So I think that's great advice for everyone to take away. So how can they find you? If they want to look up, Infinity 100 Farms.
Oh, yeah. So, the website's infinity100.com. It's not infinity100farms.com. It's just infinity100.com. Spelled out, not 100, just 100 with an H. So infinity100.com is the website. My direct contact information is on that website. They can also reach me, David, at infinity100.com. They can reach me through the Raleigh City Farm website. They can send smoke signals up in the air, reach me that way. It's not hard to find me. So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, I really
Google my name, because there's a ton of information out there with my name.
There is. Well, David, I really appreciate your time tonight. I learned a lot. And yes, you're going to be emailing me how to get going above there.
Awesome. I would love
Well,
that.
thanks so much.
I'd love to see that happen.
Hey, I'll send you pictures after we get it up and going.
That'd be awesome. You'll be amazed at how easy it is too.
Oh, I'm excited. I'm excited for the project for my husband too. Now we're actually moving, but we'll still have room above our cabinets. So
there you go.
I'm still excited about that. So as we're doing our remodel, we'll just add that piece in.
Perfect. I love it.
Awesome. Thanks, David.
Thank you.
We'd like to remind our audience that the views of our guests do not necessarily reflect the views of Bytable or of our staff personally. The purpose of the Bytable podcast is to encourage spirited dialogue around topics like food, nutrition, animal and human welfare, and the food system. Part of having an open and spirited dialogue is accepting that others have views that are different than ours and working to understand how their experiences have differed from our own. We encourage all listeners to do their own research on any and all topics discussed during the show. That being said, we hope you enjoyed the podcast, and thanks for listening.